Hello everyone and welcome to the Anatomy of Knitting episode 67. My name is Erin and I'm going to be your host. Today is April 30th, 2015. My name is Erin and I'm recording in my dining room today to bring you this episode. Unfortunately, I am still sick. I have had 2 colds in the past 3 weeks, which, as you can probably guess, has been super fun. So I will do my best to record, and hopefully I won't be coughing and sniffling too much. So, it's been super fun. In this episode, I'll do a week in review. I will talk about what's been on my needles. I'll talk about some things that I've been sewing, and I think that is it. Yes. So let's get started. I've got my show notes here and my handy tea and tissues. It's been super awesome. 2 colds. It's just, I haven't been as sick as I have been in the last 4 months. I have gotten 3 or 4 colds and strep throat and that abscess that I had right before March. I, before moving here to Ireland, only got sick maybe about once or twice a year, so this has been a hard adjustment. I know part of it's due to the fact that I have children, and they go to the daycare / it's called creche here in Ireland, and I know that that's part of what the problem is, but it's still hard to deal with. So, the last time I spoke to you, I was about to go on, or that evening I was going to go to a book launch. And I did that. It was really fun. Let's see. I went to the book launch of These Islands. It's from Ireland, Scotland, and Britain. And it is written by Sarah Breitenfeld, Susan McEndo, and Evan Bale O'Keefe. And it is a nice little, size-wise, it's like a booklet size. But content-wise, it has a lot of patterns. It has a section about the wool. It has beautiful photography. There's a section for project photos, and you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different projects in the book. And it ranges anywhere from a weaving project to a shawl project to a cowl project, a colorwork hat project, and there's 3 shawls, a pair of mitts, boot cuffs, and 2 hats. And then there's the back section's just the directions, which I'm not going to show you the secret sauce. But there's beautiful photography. There's great pictures of these Zwartbosch sheep, which is it's a breed of sheep that's kept in Kilkenny, Ireland. There's a woman, Susanna Crampton, who has a flock of Zwartbosch sheep, and yeah, there's a picture of the wool that you could get from Zwartbosch. Really beautiful. I'd like to get my hands on some of that just to feel what it feels like. So yeah, I got this book, and I got this beautiful skein of yarn, and unfortunately my light isn't doing it as much justice as it should. Actually, that's pretty close. This is from Smudge Yarns. It's Superwash Merino, and it's lace weight. There's 700 meters in here. and it's in the colorway Kinsale, and get that kitty right side up. Kinsale is a town that's about 40 minutes from where I live, and it's on the water, and there's a old fort that you could go walk through, and it's just a nice little picturesque little town. And I had the great fortune to meet Sarah, who does the dyeing for Smudge Yarns. She was at the book launch too because she's one of the authors. And I had a pretty good conversation with her, and it was really nice to meet her. She also is an American expat. I believe she said she was from Milwaukee, but don't quote me on that. She's been here. Apparently, you have to be here for over 5 years to start your own business, and I think she's been here 5 or 6. And then here's a bag I also got. She dyes here in Cork. And so the bag, the yarn, and the book were all a kit. And they're doing a knit-along, which I believe I have missed the cast-on for. I guess there was a chance to get some yarn. But it's a knit-along for the Beaker Folk Shawl. And I have enough yarn to make there's 2 sizes for this, and I have the yarn to make the big size. So I'll cast this on after I finish one of the projects that I'm going to tell you about. But that was a great night. I had an opportunity to speak with Evan, and she has agreed to donate one of her previous books, to the podcast, so we can give that out as a prize for the summer sweater knit-along. And I spoke to a woman who owned a brewery here, and it was really nice. I felt like this was the first time I had really found my people, knitting-wise, because the knitting group here in the Ballincollig is just filled with older women, and I don't really have anything in common with them because they're all like in their 60s and their 70s. And I tried out a knitting group in Blarney, and I didn't get along with them as well as I got along with the women that I spoke to that night. So, talked about that and that. The next thing that we did as a family, and this sort of requires a little bit of a backstory. When I was in university or college, between my sophomore and my junior year of college, my parents brought me along on a trip. We went to England, Ireland, and Scotland, and we spent most of our time in Northern Ireland and not down here in the country of Ireland. But we spent a few days in Dublin, and there was a shop there, and I don't remember which shop it was, but there was a shop there that had some really nice pottery that I really liked. And I would show you the vase, but it's being used by some flowers right now. But I got a vase and I got a couple of candlesticks, and had those shipped home. Fast forward to, it's probably been at least 12 years. I was bumping around on Facebook, and one of the ladies who I'm friends with via the Irish Patchwork Society on Facebook posted a link to Jack O'Patsy pottery, and he's got a very distinctive style. What he does is he makes pottery with this swirl in it, and the vase that I have has this swirl, and the candlesticks that I have this swirl. And so I was like, hey, I know who that is. And so I went over to one of the candlesticks that I have in the front room, and I picked it up and I looked at the bottom, and on the bottom it said Jack O'Patsy pottery, handmade in Cork, Ireland. It's County Cork is where he makes it, but he actually makes it in a town called, and it looks like Youghal, Youghal, but I believe it's more pronounced Youghal. The way my husband says it, he makes it sound like y'all, so I've just been calling it y'all because I'm silly like that. So we took a trip down there as a family. We ended up getting this mug, and my husband got another mug. He chose one that had been, so this one looks more like the vase that I have. It's this all blue glaze with the white clay underneath. He picked a mug that looks like this, but has some green glaze from about here down. But it's the same shape. And then I picked out a teapot, which has the swirl again, but it has red clay underneath. So instead of this white swirl, it's a red, or a red clay color swirl. So I've been enjoying drinking my tea out of those. And after we checked out the pottery place, because Youghal isn't all that big of a town, it's located on the sea, and it's really picturesque, but there's not a lot to do. So after we went to the pottery place, which was an adventure with 2 toddlers, we decided to take the boys for a walk on the beach. And so there's a few pictures that I could show you from that, which I'll put at the end of the podcast. Yeah, so we did that, and then it might have been the next day, I think. I have been running into problems with the boys not napping in the afternoons lately. And I think part of it is due because maybe they're in a growth spurt and their brains just can't quiet down, or maybe they're tolerating being awake a little longer. So I'm doing a combination of waking them up about half hour earlier than I had been. So I'd usually been waking them up at 8:30. Getting them out of bed and getting dressed. And then I'm also trying to give them real big physical activity every day to hopefully wear them out, because Mama is not ready for them to drop their nap. And they're not ready to drop their nap either, because by the end of the day, they're just sobbing messes. So after we went to Youghal, the next day was Sunday again, and I guess my husband found this friary ruin, like a friar, a friary ruin, and it's literally about a 10-minute drive from our front door. And if we could go by the crow flies, it would be a lot shorter. It's just because the roads that you have to take to get there take 10 minutes. So the ruins of the friary have been turned into a cemetery, so it's really interesting to walk around inside the ruins because there's just tombstones everywhere. So there's going to be some pictures from that too at the end, and that was fun, and the boys seemed to really enjoy that. So those are all the big things that we've done between last podcast and this podcast. So let's talk about the works in progress. Okay, so works in progress. The first thing you've seen before, it's the sock yarn blanket. Don't remember how many squares I was up to, but I have only 3 squares left until I have 2 rows. So I believe I may have been down here last time I spoke to you. So I've repeated a couple of colorways and then managed to find a few new yarns that I hadn't included, some sock yarns that I had squirreled away somewhere. So hopefully before next week I'll have finished those 3 rows, or those 3 squares, and I'll have 2 completed rows. So this is a long-term project. This is my sock yarn blanket. I am knitting it on US 4s, I believe, and I'm just using sock yarn scraps that I have left over. Not all that exciting. And then the other thing that I've been working on, it's in my cross patch bag that I made using Vintage Modern Quilts book. There's a lot of errata in that book, so be warned if you buy it. Check the errata. I got a tangle here. And so I've been working on the Hitufude cardigan for our spring-summer sweater knit along. And so what you do is you cast on provisionally, which I think I had done the last time I spoke to you. I don't quite remember. But I have finished knitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 repeats of the lace chart. And because it's lace, kind of looks bad until you block it out a little bit. But it's super easy lace. The construction so far is pretty easy once you. This is one of those patterns where you just have to trust what the pattern says to do, because you cast on, you provisionally cast on like this many stitches, and then you do another provisional cast on of a lot longer stitches, and it's probably due to the way that the construction is when you, because you knit. This is going to be a tube. This part here, this is going to be a tube for my arm. So I'm sure you take out this first shorter provisional cast on to construct the first armhole, and then you do the longer one later. But yeah, that's what that is. The rows take a while. But it's easy knitting. I've got the lace chart memorized. I don't need the chart anymore. And then I've also memorized which way I need to, because you slip the first stitch on each row, but you have to hold the yarn a certain way, and I've memorized that as well. This is still my first ball. Still have a decent amount of yarn left. But it's probably about a third to maybe a quarter of the way gone. It's a lot smaller. And I'm knitting this out of Full Wise 100% Merino Superwash in that colorway. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that because I really fail at speaking any German. So I think I have a total of 5 skeins of this. It might just be 4, but I think I have 5, which should be more than enough to knit this. I should have leftovers. Excuse me. So that is all the things I've been knitting. There's not been a whole heck of a lot, mostly because of what you see in the background. The way I usually do things is I will sew during the day and knit at night. In the case of, I will only sew at night to hand sew down binding, which is what I had done with this. This is my night sky quilt. Let me see if I can. This is a design from Jaybird Quilts. She has a ruler that she designed to use for it, called the Sidekick ruler, which I use to create these diamonds and these triangles. This is a kit that I purchased from Fiddlesticks Quilt Shop, and I sewed the top and quilted it, and the back, which I don't know if you'll be able to see. It's not that side, it's this side. I had some blocks left over because I didn't read the directions, so I added some blocks to the back. So that's my one of my big quilt finishes. The second quilt that I have finished is an equilateral triangle quilt that I made, and I'm going to insert a picture here. It's an equilateral triangle quilt that I used the Sidekick ruler again to cut the equilateral triangles, and excuse me. I used some fabric that I had in the stash. It was Very Hungry Caterpillar, or The Hungry Caterpillar, I think is the book. I had that in the stash, and I made a quilt for a baby that's going to be born next month, or almost next month, in June. I took this quilt that quilt top, the Hungry Caterpillar quilt top, to a friend's house who has a long arm, and I was able to use the long arm to quilt it, which was a pretty fun experience. It usually takes probably about 2, 3, maybe 4 hours to quilt that size when you're quilting it on your domestic machine, but I think it maybe took me a little over an hour and a half maybe to quilt that. Let's see. Talked about the caterpillar, talked about the night sky. We got our recent IPS newsletter. I am currently the editorial rep, so I wrote a couple of things for this. I wrote, utilizing social media and the internet when you have quilter's block. Bam, Erin Case. And I wrote the Southern Branch News and took all these pictures. So, there we go, Southern Branch News. It's exciting. Today is, here's a big ad for the Limerick Quilt Center. Today is the deadline for the next newsletter, and I have submitted 3 articles for that one. One is the Branch News, and then 2 others are just more general. If they're accepted, I'll show them to you when they come by. I believe last time I spoke to you, I couldn't tell you about the block of the month that we had been doing, but since it's been debuted, I can show you. So this is the next block of the month, the Irish Patchwork Society. It is called the Snail Trail, and it's a variation of a square within a square. And you just kind of rotate where you place your fabrics. You cut 3 big squares. This square, and this square, and then cut into the triangles, which is what you see here. And then you cut the 4 patch in the center. It's pretty easy. The only complicated part is trying to line up these points here. So that's the block. And because we're going out of town next month, I've already made the block for May and June because we're going to be out of town. I didn't want to have to worry about for the June block. Trying to get everything done ASAP when we got back, because we get back like a Tuesday, and then Saturday is the meeting. So hopefully everything will be done. I'll even have everything printed, and I won't have to worry about it, because it takes about 3 days for the boys to get over the jet lag, and yeah, I didn't want to have to worry about that. So I showed you the trail. I showed you the IPS newsletter. I thought there was one more thing, but I can't think of it. I guess that's it. It's going to be a shorter episode for you, 23 minutes in, and then I'm going to add the stuff at the back, and the pictures, and probably some videos of the boys. So I hope you all enjoy that. If you want to friend me on Instagram, I'm EKSRN2002. If you want to find me on Ravelry, I'm KnittingRN. You can email the podcast at theanatomyofknitting@gmail.com. And we have the website, theanatomyofknitting.com, where I'm posting all the episodes as well. So if you want to just follow us in your feed reader, or instead of like downloading us on iTunes, you could do that. Send me good health vibes, especially right before we travel, because I don't want to be sick on the airplane. That would suck. Thank you for watching, and next week the lights should be better. I didn't feel like hauling everything upstairs. It was all kind of down here, so I figured I'd just email or podcast from the kitchen table. So you get to see another part of our house, and that can't be all that bad, can it? All right. So I'll talk to y'all next time, and I hope you have a good week, and yeah, bye.
Hi. Mommy. Hi. Mommy. Welcome to you, Mommy. I want to go.
Don't push.